And authorities are trying to locate a Lancaster man who they are calling a person of interest in the death of his wife, 33-year-old Shayla Cabrera.
This comes as disturbing new video shows him dragging a large object away from their home just one day before her body was found dumped in the Angeles National Forest.
Shayla's lifeless body in the Angeles National Forest. They reportedly found her because they spotted the material, the same material seen on the ring footage.
This is Shayla Cabrera, who was first a mother. At 33, she had shaped her days around 3 boys, 9, 6, and 4, organizing work schedules, school routines, and the small rituals that make children feel safe. She had come to the United States from Peru with a familiar ambition shared by many immigrants: to build stability, opportunity, and a future that felt larger than the place she left behind.
Yes, Susan, that vigil is in progress right now. You can see a couple of dozen people have gathered to remember Shayla Cabrera, the mother of 3. There are activists and friends here in support of the victim. And I can tell you this, that I have new information, investigators telling me they have strong evidence against the husband, DNA blood evidence linking him to his wife's murder.
What she created there was not wealth, but continuity. A home where meals were shared, homework was checked, and affection was consistent. Friends described Shayla as warm and dependable, someone who listened without judgment and showed up without being asked. She worked steadily, carried responsibilities quietly, and offered encouragement even when her own circumstances were heavy. To neighbors, she appeared busy and tired in the way many parents are, but never withdrawn. Her presence suggested resilience. What it did not reveal was the strain beneath that composure. Behind the apartment door, Shayla's marriage was deteriorating. Her husband, 36-year-old Josimar Cabrera Corno, projected normalcy to the outside world. Inside the relationship, according to those who later spoke to investigators, control and fear were daily realities. The abuse did not begin in California. Years earlier, in Peru, Shayla had reported domestic violence. The violence extended beyond Shayla. Family members later recounted that even the children were not immune. What made the situation particularly difficult to escape were the threats that accompanied it. Shayla was repeatedly warned that if she tried to leave, she would lose her children.
Who was killed. Her mother tonight speaking from Peru about the last time she spoke with her daughter. Her daughter telling her that she intended to file domestic violence charges against her husband here in Southern California. That never happened. Her daughter now dead and her son-in-law now on the loose.
The threats were credible enough to hold her in place. For a parent, especially one navigating immigration systems and financial vulnerability, the risk of separation can feel greater than the certainty of harm. Friends noticed the tension. Some tried to help, offering places to stay or urging her to seek protection. But domestic violence often advances quietly, reinforced by isolation and fear rather than spectacle. By the summer of 2025, those calculations changed. Staying had become more dangerous than leaving. The years of abuse had eroded any belief that the situation could improve. Shayla began to speak openly with trusted friends about divorce. She understood the risk. Leaving an abusive partner is statistically the most dangerous moment. Still, she moved forward. In early August, Shayla told her parents in Peru that she intended to leave her husband and take the children with her. The conversation carried determination and fear in equal measure. She planned to report the abuse to authorities in Lancaster. It was a step toward protection and accountability, but it was also a signal to her husband that his control was ending. Inside the apartment, the atmosphere shifted. The relationship had been sustained by intimidation. When that leverage weakened, What remained was volatility.
A Lancaster mother of 3 is found dead, and tonight sheriff's detectives say a chilling video ties her husband to her murder.
Homicide investigators with the LA County Sheriff's Department confirming that it was the husband of Shayla Cabrera who was seen dragging a large object in a large piece of material. The couple lived here in this apartment complex with their 3 young sons.
For those who later examine the case, this period stands out as a critical escalation point. When control is threatened, violence can intensify. August 9th was the last day Shayla was seen alive. What occurred inside the apartment on August 10th remains partially sealed in court records, but the broad outline is clear. Prosecutors later alleged that Shayla was killed in the family's apartment. The charge included the use of a knife, an allegation that placed the act firmly in the category of intentional homicide. Investigators did not describe a sudden loss of control. They described deliberation. 3 children were present in the home. They were young enough not to understand what was happening, but old enough for the consequences to last a lifetime. The crime did not end with Shayla's death. It continued in the decisions that followed. After the killing, Josimar began to conceal what he had done. The behavior that followed suggested planning rather than chaos. He wrapped Shayla's body in fabric, securing it carefully. The choice of material and the method of movement would later become central evidence. He waited for the early morning hours, when the apartment complex was quiet and attention was minimal. If you're following this case closely, take a moment to support this investigation-focused coverage. Like the video, subscribe for more carefully researched stories, and share your thoughts in the comments. What detail here stands out to you, and why do you think it mattered later? At approximately 2:40 a.m., a neighbor returning from a night shift noticed unusual activity. Josimar was cleaning out the trunk of the family car. At that hour, the behavior felt out of place. It registered as unsettling, though its meaning was not yet clear. Shortly before 4 a.m., a doorbell camera captured what police would later describe as impossible to ignore.
Dragging like some kind of a blanket with something inside. Probably he had the body in there. That's what I'm thinking. Had any interaction with the husband? He always seems like mad all the time. But with the wife, she was pretty nice.
The footage showed a man struggling to drag a heavy fabric-wrapped bundle across the pavement. The weight forced him to stop and adjust his grip. The movement was slow and deliberate. The object was not carried. It was pulled. The camera recorded the loading of the bundle into the trunk. It recorded the car leaving the complex. At the moment, the footage was just another overnight clip saved to a server. In hindsight, it became the spine of the case. Josimar drove north to the Angeles National Forest, a vast expanse of rugged terrain an hour from Lancaster. He removed the bundle from the trunk and discarded it down an embankment, leaving it among brush and rock. Then he returned home. 2 days passed. Shayla did not answer calls or messages. Friends grew alarmed. She was attentive, especially where her children were concerned. On August 12th, a missing person report was filed with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Deputies arrived at the apartment to ask questions. Josimar's explanation shifted. At one point, he suggested that immigration authorities had taken his wife. At another, he claimed she had left with someone else. Later, he implied an accident but offered no details. The contradictions were immediate and concerning.
Search for missing mom Shayla Gutierrez has now turned into a search for her killer. Friends have been gathering here at her Lancaster apartment to share their grief and anger.
As investigators spoke with Shayla's friends and family, a pattern emerged. Years of abuse, recent plans to leave, and threats involving the children. The missing person case took on a darker shape. detectives canvassed the area for surveillance footage. On August 13th, they found the doorbell recording. The image of the wrapped bundle being dragged from the apartment reframed the investigation. What had been uncertainty became focus. The case was transferred to the Sheriff's Department's Homicide Bureau. Search teams from Crescenta Valley, Altadena, and Montrose were deployed to the Angeles National Forest. The area covers more than 700,000 acres. The search was daunting, but investigators had direction. They knew what the fabric looked like. They knew the approximate timeline. At the same time, another concern emerged. Josimar and the 3 children were missing. Authorities feared he had fled the country with them. Alerts were issued with the assistance of the Mexican and Peruvian consulates. On August 16th, shortly after 10 a.m., a search and rescue team reported finding material consistent with what appeared in the surveillance footage. It was located down an embankment in a remote section of the forest. Homicide detectives responded. The material contained Shayla Cabrera. She was pronounced deceased at the scene. The confirmation brought grief and clarity. The video evidence, the location, and the condition of the material aligned. The investigation now centered on apprehension and accountability. That same day, authorities learned that the 3 children had been located in Peru and placed into protective custody.
He had it planned. He already had taken the documents from him like the week before. She told one of our friends that he's asking for my stuff. He's asking for my ID, for my social, the kid's birth certificate. Like, why? She told her mom, I don't want to be with him. I want to report him. And that's what, she was going to do that day.
The event was quiet and heavy, marked by recognition that intervention had come too late. Josimar's flight exposed a gap between suspicion and legal authority. As he traveled through Mexico and into Peru, he was detained and questioned. Each time he was released because formal charges had not yet been filed in the United States. Without those charges, there was no legal basis to hold him. In Peru, authorities questioned him at an airport, took the children into custody, and allowed him to leave. The children were eventually repatriated to Los Angeles via Mexico City to be reunited with their maternal grandmother. The process was complex, involving multiple governments and agencies, and underscored how jurisdictional boundaries can delay protection. On August 21st, homicide investigators presented their case to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Josimar Cabrera Corno was charged with 1 count of murder, with an allegation involving the use of a knife as a deadly weapon. An extradition warrant followed. An international notice marked him as a wanted fugitive. If convicted, he faced a potential sentence of 26 years to life in prison. For several days, his whereabouts remained uncertain. Then on August 27th, he surrendered to international authorities in Lima, Peru. Images released by police showed him in custody, subdued and surrounded by officers. Extradition proceedings began, a process expected to take months. Until then, he would remain in Peruvian custody. The legal case raised questions that extend beyond the courtroom. For many observers, the troubling aspect was not just what happened, but what preceded it. The warnings were present. The threats were known. Friends tried to help. Shayla planned to seek protection. Yet the mechanisms designed to intervene moved more slowly than the violence.
The Sheriff's Department says they expect the DA to file charges in this case soon, and that would start the extradition process to bring Cabrera back to the United States to face charges for this crime.
The case also highlighted the vulnerability of immigrant families navigating abuse. Fear of losing children, fear of authorities, and dependence on an abuser can trap victims in dangerous situations. When escape finally comes, it can trigger the very violence it seeks to avoid. The children at the center of this case will grow up with an absence that cannot be explained away. Their mother's life was defined by care and persistence. Her death was defined by someone else's need for control. As the extradition process unfolds and the case moves toward trial, the footage remains a silent witness. It does not explain motive or intent in words. It shows behavior. It shows consequences. It shows how a private pattern of abuse culminated in a public record that could not be ignored. The impact of Shayla Cabrera's death extends beyond a single verdict. It sits in the space where prevention failed and documentation succeeded. It asks whether warning signs are treated as urgent enough, whether threats are taken seriously before they become irreversible, and whether justice can ever fully address what was taken. In the end, the case does not resolve neatly. It leaves behind children, a grieving family, and a community forced to confront how quietly danger can grow. The camera recorded one early morning. The consequences will last far longer. What remains after the legal process is not resolution, but residue. Even if a conviction is secured, it cannot restore what was methodically taken. The criminal case will focus on evidence, timelines, and jurisdiction. It will examine intent, opportunity, and action.
Devastated seeing this video, seeing, the way he dragged her out and the way they found her.
He was telling me to park. He was just being weird at the parking lot. His eyes looked just scary.
But outside the courtroom, the questions are broader and more uncomfortable. Shayla Cabrera's life is now often summarized by the manner of her death. Yet that framing risks obscuring what mattered most. She was a mother who structured her world around her children's safety. She was a daughter who stayed connected across continents. She was a friend who showed up, even when her own strength was being quietly drained. The violence that ended her life did not define her. It interrupted her. For investigators and advocates, the case reinforces a familiar pattern. Escalation followed disclosure. The moment Shayla prepared to leave, the danger intensified. It transformed suspicion into certainty. But it also stands as a reminder of how much occurs before a camera ever records anything. Years of coercion, threats, and fear leave no digital trace. They rely on belief, intervention, and action from others. The children will carry forward without their mother, shaped by an absence created by violence they did not choose. Their future will depend not only on legal outcomes, but on sustained care, stability, and truth. Shayla Cabrera's case lingers because it exposes the distance between knowing and preventing. It asks what society does with warning signs once they are recognized. So what warnings did everyone miss? And how many more recordings will it take before we start recognizing control for what it is? If this story unsettled you, stay with it, question the patterns, and share it where it might be heard before it's too late.